Hello and welcome to the 29th Scouching Report for the 2020 NHL Draft. Today we're going to be looking at Muskegon Lumberjacks winger Daniil Gushchin, originally hailing from Moscow in Russia. Gushchin has now completed his second season in the USHL, where he's been a real standout, at least in the offensive sense, for the last 2 seasons. He's a player whose future seemed a little bit uncertain whether he was going to return to the USHL, go to college, or play pro, but it turns out he's going to be making the jump to play in the OHL next season with the Niagara Ice Dogs. And this to me is a player that I think could absolutely torch the OHL moving forward, so let's find out why. So if you've never seen a Scouching Report before, the way that we break down a prospect is we look at 5 separate categories: think, move, get, pass, and shoot. Within each one of these categories, we give the prospect a number and a letter grade, where the number indicates the overall tier of talent that I saw within that category, and the letter indicates the overall consistency within that tier that I saw across the 7 games that I tracked. So first we look at the think category, and to just about anyone it is pretty clear from looking at Daniil Gushchin's point totals and his height and his position, and just write him off as an all-out offensive skilled winger. And yes, he is a player where skill is a hallmark of his game. But to me, there's a lot of patience and intelligence with Daniil Gushchin's game that I think goes underreported quite often. And if anyone is telling you that Daniil Gushchin is a player who does not at least chip in at both ends of the ice and is too focused on offense, they are lying. This is a player who is gifted with tremendous agility and mobility, and he can back check deep into the defensive zone, able to cut off passing lanes and shooting lanes. And for an offensively skilled player, he is more than happy to be a responsible positional player on his line. He spots for his line mates when they pinch up in the offensive zone, and he can cover a blue line more than competently, and he certainly has enough mobility to at least participate in defensive rushes as a useful defensive player. He's also capable of playing with a lot of patience all over the ice, almost to a fault from time to time. But on breakouts, he chips in where necessary, executing calm and simple plays that just push play positively. He uses outstanding agility to constantly be searching for open ice in the offensive zone, looking for shooting opportunities or dangerous passing chances. And through these instincts, he generated a tremendous amount of shot attempts off of his own stick, with over 27.8 total shot attempts per 60 minutes, which registered over 40% of Muskegon's shot attempts with Gushchin on the ice. This is a primary offensive weapon for this team, but he's also a player that can chip in defensive transitions, is positionally comfortable in the defensive zone, and chips in selflessly on breakouts, so there's a lot to like for him in this category. There's also a lot of really nice quick thinking plays in the neutral zone to get pucks onto his stick and off of his own stick onto a line mate's stick as quickly as possible. But one thing that really holds him back from a 1 in this category is that he can play a little bit carelessly with and without the puck from time to time. Trying these little quick fancy plays that work out some of the time is really fun to watch in junior hockey, but it's not something that you see done a tremendous amount in the NHL and might get coached out of his game moving forward. And on back checks, he absolutely isn't perfect. Sometimes he could back check far too deep in the defensive zone, completely lose track of the trailing rush forwards, and lose track of passing and shooting lanes, leaving too much open ice in the defensive zone. But this also might have been a team issue. There were a few instances where I saw Muskegon with 4 players below the goal line at times. So in the think category, I'm giving Daniil Gushchin a 2B. This is a highly agile and intelligent offensive player that is more than willing to chip in defensively, which is really promising for me to see, especially out of a player that is Daniil Gushchin's size. He's clever, he uses his feet and his brain together to anticipate opposing breakouts, and of all of the players I've tracked this year, he helped generate the 7th most controlled offensive zone transitions. He can push play really well and use his skill to deceive defenders, but also take the foot off the gas pedal a little bit, survey the ice, and make a smart passing play that facilitates positive offensive play. So maintaining focus on absolutely every shift and making the right play rather than the first play that comes to mind from time to time will help Gushchin become a more reliable player, especially in transition. There was a bit too much risk-taking for no discernible reason, and losing track of trailing forecheckers from time to time is something that could be ironed out over time. But overall, when it comes to his positional instincts, I found him to be very undervalued in that area of the game. Next, we go to the move category, and this one's really fun. Of all of the players I have seen and tracked this year eligible for this year's draft, draft, Daniil Gushchin might be amongst the best in terms of a combination of agility and puck control. He is capable of absolutely humiliating opposing defenders from time to time. And there is an absolutely electrifying amount of skill with Daniil Gushchin at a variety of paces of play. And even when he's not pushing offensive zone transitions as quickly as he possibly can, he still uses that agility and puck control and deception ability to open up space for himself, circle back in the defensive zone, and look for rush patterns up the ice from there. This is a guy who, when he's really on his game, can quarterback an offense at all areas of the ice, in my view. I also found that along the boards, he works through pressure really well, uses his agility to cut all over the ice and try to shake defenders off of his tail, and he rarely gives up on play when the puck is on his own stick. Although I do think that over time, some more strength on his frame should raise the floor of this talent to be more projectable moving forward. While he can generate a lot of speed through both his turns and straightforward skating, and while it was clear to me that he was also made a primary target for defensive systems to counter, it would be nice to see him use that speed and skill combination that I have seen so many times out of him to really attack the net more often than he does. He's a player who can sometimes get pushed to the perimeter and removed from play a little bit too easily, and if he's going to be an undersized, skilled winger that brings his offensive talent to the National Hockey League, he's going to need to put some strength on his body and really learn how to fight through more defensive pressure than he's facing now. So in the move category, I'm going to give Gushchin a 1C. This one's pretty straightforward. He is one of the more exciting players that I have tracked in this year's draft. He generates a huge amount of controlled offensive zone transitions through a combination of generating power through his turns and forward skating, using his teammates effectively in transition while also generating them on his own stick. He manages back checkers well through his shifty skill and his agility, and like I said earlier, there are times that when he's in a rush in the offensive zone, he is more than capable of absolutely embarrassing you. But there were moments where his motor kind of took a step down from where it could be, especially in the defensive zone, and I think this ties back to a common theme that I saw with Gushchin, that from time to time, there were lapses in focus that really caused him to take unnecessary risks or just not put in that extra 10% that could make him a real solid two-way player with excellent offensive skill. But at the very least, Daniil Gushchin is a ton of fun to watch. And he has all the talent in the world to be a creative, slippery, offensive winger who can score plenty of points in the National Hockey League, especially if he can put some more strength on his frame. Next we go to the get category, and I said this already, but don't let anyone tell you that Daniil Gushchin is a bad defensive hockey player. He combines agility, speed, and his intelligence to anticipate breakouts and forecheck hard in the offensive zone. He's a sneaky player able to chase down forecheckers from behind and use his stick to separate pucks. And he does what small skilled forwards to me really need to be doing constantly all over the ice, which is just apply pressure. Make the opponent make decisions before they're ready, and you will likely cause more mistakes than you think. And Gushchin is a very good example of this type of player. He is a hard worker away from the puck when he's really playing well. He has more than enough speed and mobility to cover in back checks and help out his defenders. And at the offensive blue line, he anticipates breakouts well and can just snuff them out before they even get started. And when he's really playing well, he gives the opponent as little time to think with the puck as he can, which is something that I think will take him a long way. But there were times where he would dial back the intensity a little bit too much for my liking, and he also was really not that much of a physical threat. And there were times where I felt that if you drove wide on him in the defensive zone, you could really get by him pretty easily. But I think there's all the potential in the world for him to be at least a decent pressure applicator, which for a scoring winger is more than I can say for a lot of young players who prefer to play offensively. So in the get category, I'm giving Daniil Gushchin a 1D. There are times when I'm convinced that he's going to put it all together and figure it out at both ends with the combination of stick skill, agility, his intelligence, and his intensity, even if he's not going to be the most physical winger you've ever seen. But there are also other times where I feel like he's only applying himself at his best, mostly in the offensive zone. And I'm all for hard forecheckers that try to cut down opposing breakouts in the offensive zone to keep the puck pinned there. But you are going to end up in your zone at least some of the time, and having wingers who are small and undersized, taking the intensity meter down a few notches in the defensive zone is a quick quick way to allow dangerous shot attempts against that you really don't want to be seeing. And the aggressiveness with his body was a little bit inconsistent, so I don't really see a premier shutdown player here in the defensive zone, but to me I think he could be more than competent down the road. And through all of these ups and downs, he still was cutting off opposition control and defensive zone transitions over 50% of the time, so it all adds up to being relatively positive overall here. Next we go to the pass category, and you might look at his pass completion percentage of 65% and think, he's a bad passer, who's also 17th in my sample of dangerous pass attempts per 60 minutes, and of all of his pass attempts, over 20% of them are dangerous. Add on top of this the fact that he's taking over 45% of his team's shot attempts, and you might be able to forgive the low completion percentages. And to me, all signs point to Gushchin being a primary offensive focal point for the Muskegon Lumberjacks without a tremendous amount of help around him. They just didn't seem like a team that really put a whole lot together unless he was directly involved, whether it was sending dangerous passes into dangerous areas, or taking dangerous shot attempts off of his own stick, or generating those offensive transitions himself. Gushchin is one of the more clever and dynamic passers that I've tracked this season, able to fake a pass through one passing lane only to immediately open up another passing lane where there are no defenders and a clear shot to a teammate. He also uses his skill to navigate through dangerous scenarios and find open line mates all over the offensive zone, but he can also slow things down, take the ice in at his own pace, and make the right passing decision to a line mate no matter where they are. There are also times where in the offensive zone, Daniil Gushchin's passing can only be described as ludicrous, and it follows the common theme we're encountering with Gushchin of just being tons and tons of fun to watch. So in the pass category, I'm giving Gushchin a 1C. For a player that couldn't complete 35% of his passes, I never felt that his passing decisions were necessarily poor, but there were times where there was a lack of awareness or just trying a fancy play for no particular reason that would just end up on the opponent's stick. So cutting down on those decisions over time should be something that Gushchin thinks about. And there was also a general inconsistency with the amount of times he even got the chance to attempt passes. One game I tracked, per 60 minutes, he only managed 29 pass attempts. On the other end of the spectrum, there was a game where I tracked him at 86 pass attempts per 60 minutes. And in terms of dangerous passing, there were games where he registered 0 per 60 minutes, and there was also some games where he registered up to 24 dangerous pass attempts per 60 minutes, which would put him near the top of my list. And being a winger who does chip in defensively, that leads me to believe that the team around him wasn't doing a tremendous amount to consistently get pucks to him to quarterback an offense. But I am hopeful that moving to Niagara, increasing the quality of his line mates even a little bit, and just following the trends that I saw in Gushchin at his best should inflate these passing numbers a little bit more, and as such his dangerous passing as well, because his playmaking vision again at times was just ludicrous. Finally, we look at the shoot category. And well, with Daniil Gushchin on the ice, the Muskegon Lumberjacks were 40th in terms of generating shot attempts for. But in terms of individual shot attempts per 60, Daniil Gushchin rockets to number 1 on my list, and that's over the second place finisher by over 16%. His skill, agility, and creativity really helped to get him into those dangerous areas so he can generate those dangerous shot attempts for himself. In terms of dangerous shot attempts per 60 minutes, he was second in my tracking list behind only Lukas Reichel. However, as is similar to the number 2 total shot attempts per 60 player that I've tracked this season, Alexander Pashin, Daniil Gushchin was a little bit prone to just heaving pucks on net from wherever he desired in the offensive zone. And that can be frustrating. You know he's more than capable and more than skilled enough to attack the middle of the ice and generate more dangerous shot attempts than he already is. So cutting down on what I would call those low danger shot attempts is absolutely something Gushchin will need to do moving forward because he's more than capable of doing so. But I will also say that Gushchin, especially away from the puck, does get to high danger areas often, and 23% of his shot attempts were high danger, which is very notable. His brain and agility gets him into open ice tons of times in the offensive zone, so employing that in dangerous areas more often and having line mates able to spot him and get pucks to him in dangerous areas should make him more of a lethal goal scorer than he already is. And just to illustrate how good of a goal scorer Daniil Gushchin could be, one of the games I tracked, Muskegon was losing 3-1 with a minute and a half left in the game, and Gushchin scored his second, third, and fourth goals of the game to win 4-3 in overtime. So this is a player that can and has put his team on his back in the dying seconds of a game to pull off a win. So in the shoot category, I'm giving Gushchin a 1B. I think there's tremendous amounts of potential here for him. He's got a quick shot, he can navigate into dangerous areas both with and without the puck. If he starts using his skill and agility a little bit more often to at least turn those low danger chances into medium danger chances, he could be a lethal goal scorer, and with better line mates to help him finish plays in the offensive zone, this could be a dual threat offensive player that really spooks his opponents. So the way that we wrap up these reports is we look at the best part of a player's game, the good part of a player's game, and the not so good part of a player's game. The best part of Gushchin's game is his combination of agility and puck control. Simply put, it is excellent. His ability to quickly cut around the ice using his agility, keeping defenders on their heels, opening up rushing and passing lanes all over the ice, and generating offense off of his own stick, it all adds up to putting him near the top of my tracking list this season. And assuming that his current talent develops to a higher level over the next few years, his ability to escape pressure should come a few steps, especially with some more strength, and he could become an extremely exciting player more than capable of taking over a game, especially in the offensive sense. The good part of Gushchin's game is just his dual threat offensive play. Some better line mates that can get pucks to him when he's open in the offensive zone, or finish plays that he's trying to set up, should automatically inflate his production beyond the already pretty crazy levels it's at. 12.6 dangerous passes and 15.9 dangerous shot attempts combined together is simply remarkable, especially when you consider that he was responsible for 46.7% of the shot attempts when Muskegon had him on the ice. He finds open ice in dangerous areas very well, he's willing to shoot from everywhere, and he's able to manage patience and aggression with his passing game very well. So with his all-around offense, there's just a lot to really like about Gushchin's projectability here. The not-so-good part revolves around his lack of focus from time to time. Trying things that were a little bit too risky for no real discernible reason was something I latched onto over time. He could be a little bit inconsistent with getting his feet moving, especially away from the puck to chase down forecheckers, and losing sight of trailing forecheckers in the defensive zone was an issue that I caught a couple of times, especially for a winger that's willing to backcheck like Gushchin does. So he's a great positional player at both ends of the ice, but in terms of maintaining focus, applying pressure, and maintaining his intensity level, it really felt a little bit too hit or miss for me right now. So overall, Daniil Gushchin gets a 1C. I really like this player. He is tons of fun to watch. And if we're all being honest, what else is this sport all about outside of just how fun it is? His agility is tremendous. His skill can leave defenders in the dust. Away from the puck, he's an underrated pressure applicator, especially in the offensive zone. He's a great stick checker, and he generates offensive transitions with control 75% of the time. While he's going to an OHL team that was not particularly good last year in the Niagara Ice Dogs, I'm convinced that he's going to hit the ground running and make the team that drafts him look pretty smart pretty quickly. He's a player that puts a lot on his shoulders quite a lot of the time, but seems to handle it just fine. More strength on his frame, more conditioning, more experience against higher quality competition, and more encouragement to really attack dangerous areas of the ice more often with his agility and skill could all make him a lethal offensive winger, and you don't really have to worry too much about his play away from the puck, which is already pretty solid. He's also very dynamic, able to play at a very high pace in a rush offense, while also slowing things down, taking his time and surveying the ice to look for the next option for himself. And this is also a player who is 5'8" that Muskegon was willing to put out and kill penalties, which is something that I also could see down the road for him with the agility and explosivity that he has. And while there is evidence that his line mates didn't necessarily give him a whole lot to work with, refining his game to be a primary generator of offense who can attack the middle of the ice while mitigating those moments of carelessness for Gushchin will be really important to turn him into as good of a player as he could be. But all that being said, I am a huge believer in Daniil Gushchin, and he has been in my first round for this whole season. And if this is a player you can get in the second round and take your time with to really develop his strength and his agility and get him to attack dangerous areas more often, I think that it's only a matter of time before Daniil Gushchin turns into quite a remarkable offensive winger in the National Hockey League. So that's all for this Scouching Report. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you can click all the buttons you see below me so you never miss another one. If you really liked it, you could sign up on Patreon or click join below to sign up for a YouTube membership. You'll get access to an exclusive Discord server, early access to videos, credits at the end of every video, data sheets for hundreds of drafted and undrafted prospects, as well as plenty of other goodies. Or you could pick up some merchandise at the Scouchwear shop, where 50% of all profits go to the Women's Sports Foundation. So that's all, and we'll see you in the next one.